Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie? You better think. Use your mind, don't be a follower. You better think. Yeah, I like that.
You're listening to You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen and Poetess Chanelle, and sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. Deception. Let's talk about it. It's basically the act of having someone believe something that's not true. For instance, when I was younger, 15, 16, I looked more mature than I was. So I took advantage of it and I told the ladies that I was 18, 19, basically bordered on adulthood so that they didn't mind giving me some of those kisses. These ladies were usually about 20 something. Unknown pedophilia, as I call it, because they had no idea of my age. I was definitely practicing deception, and I was happy to tell anybody my age if it went too far for me, and luckily that would make them gasp and stop. A lot of times deception comes under the form now of a term called testing. Oh, I just told you that to see how you were going to respond. Oh, I just told you that because I don't know you too well. Oh, I just told you that because I was mad at you. Oh, I just told you that to see if you're cheating on me. Oh, I just told you that because I knew you were going to be angry at me. I told you that so I can get that money that you give me every month. I told you that so that I could keep getting that booty that you would cut off if you know the truth. We normally practice deception to continue a reception. It's something we're trying to maintain, either a relationship or a distance, right? Let me tell them I'm somewhere else so they don't come to the house today. Let me tell them I'm homesick so they don't come over today, even though I'm sitting here doing splits and taking down a martini watching a movie. Let me tell them I put that check in the mail even though I don't even have a checkbook. I'm going to tell him I like horror movies even though I can't stand them because he's so damn cute. He is worth tolerating. He's worth the deception. I know I messed up, but I told her like I got this job with XYZ because she fly and I really want to take her out. And she says she only go out with people of a certain caliber, so I had to put on an act so that I could get a date. I am sick, but I'm not as sick as I pretend to be so that I could get some extra care. I didn't tell him that you came over because you know he gonna be mad since you his best friend. I told her she was really cute, but for real though, I ain't interested in her at all. I just didn't want to hurt her feelings. That girl told me she had 3 kids. Turned out she had 9. Here alone, not including where she come from. I asked him, do he have kids? He say no. I find out he got 7, but since none of them live with him, he decided to say he ain't have none, meaning he ain't have none in the house. Is how he trying to twist it now. In the meeting when we called him out to do the math, he couldn't, even though it was on his resume. Turns out what he wrote and what he can do don't line up. I'll see where I'm going here. Deception takes place everywhere. Everywhere. Work lives, love lives, family lives. And a lot of times we don't even know this shit is going on until something goes wrong with the plan of the deceiver. I do what I always do. I try to ask questions that will tongue-tie people that are usually up to grime. I no longer take things for granted that people have good intention. I approach most things now almost like a detective, just paying attention to everything, the big and the small now, so that nothing slips through the cracks or you don't have this big elephant sitting in the room that you don't even notice. And we still end up deceived. And sometimes we end up naughty and deceiving, whatever the reason. This is a fun topic. I'm looking forward to this week with all of you on You Betta THiNK, hosted by Cass Allen and the poetess Chanelle.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think.
Deception by Poetess Chanelle. You cannot buy trust, but you betrayed me with your lust. Those girls you were talking to, you said you were playing. But remember what I said, be careful where you're laying. You tried to bring me fleas, but I fled instead. Then had the nerve to ask why the relationship is dead. I answered and said, I conquered my fear of being alone. God gave me the strength to move and go on. You looked at me as if what I said was unbelievable. I reminded you about that text I read. It was inconceivable. Men and women you wanted, you should have been honest. I would have bowed out gracefully, there's no doubt about it. You kept calling my phone to explain yourself. I just had to deal with the cards that I was dealt. Flashbacks came to me when I was alone. You thought you had my mind, body, and soul in a zone. Now at peace with myself with leaving, I had to ask God to grant me the strength to keep me from grieving. Another failed relationship, had to stop beating up on myself. Deception at its finest, the deepest hurt I've ever felt.
Boom, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard it right here on You Better Think, and you better just do that. You better think about the words that the poetess Chanelle is conveying to you all.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think.
As always, thank you, ladies and gentlemen in other categories, for joining us for this month's episode of You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen and the wonderful poetess Chanelle. As you just heard, and as you always get the pleasure of hearing every month, Miss Poetess Chanelle just dropped us with deception. And I know y'all felt it from the beginning, because she let out immediately with how you cannot buy trust. And we all know that we see it all the time in the news. A man or a woman that has hundreds of millions of dollars, who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to look a certain way, gets deceived by someone that is out there with someone else. Just like Miss Poetess Chanelle said, you were playing. I heard you were playing, but then it comes to a head and I gotta flee. Miss Poetess Chanelle, let us feel you. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Well, deception is just not limited to, relationships. The poem was about a relationship that I was in, and it was hurtful to find out that this person that I trusted was going behind my back, not just going behind my back, not just going behind my back with one person, but the deception went very deep. And it becomes very hurtful once you find out that the person who you thought they were, it's a totally different person, and then you can't even look at them the same anymore. You can't even stay in the same room with them anymore, because it's like, who are you? You start questioning, who is this person that I've been laying next to for the past 2 years? Was it all of who they say they are? And then they accuse you all the time, make you feel like, what am I doing wrong? But the whole time, they were doing what they wanted to do.
That's
You
an
know?
excellent point. You just mentioned something too about where you lay. And you also speak to that in this poem about being careful where you lay. Do you think at some points, like, no matter how careful we are, sometimes one just slips by us, even if we dot our I's and cross our T's? Sometimes it's that one out there that deceives so well.
Yes.
Even when you
Yes.
have hindsight, you go, I did everything right. I did the search online. I did the criminal background check. I checked the credit. I checked in with the friends, and this nigga beat me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm gonna take responsibility in my part in this because I let the charm and the smile and the things that was being done for me, gifts and things like that. I let that overshadow. I let that blind me. You know,
So you
I
basically saying you saw red flags and ignored them.
yeah, I did. I saw red flags from the beginning, but I was like, you know what? Okay, we go work this out, but not that deception that I discovered.
Right.
That took me by surprise.
I could
That took
imagine
me
it
by a
did.
complete. Yes, yes, it did.
I mean,
It
just the
really
fact that
did.
you wrote about, you had to ask God to restrain you from some certain emotions. And normally, when we go to God and ask for strength to deal with emotions, I can only imagine it had to be a struggle.
It really did. It really did because I probably wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you guys if I did not go to God because you guys have no idea about the things that crossed my mind, what I wanted to do.
Excuse me, audience.
You know, the acts that I wanted to commit. Like, how dare you put my life in danger, put my health in danger?
And you speak to an excellent point there. Deception is not just about smoke and mirrors, it's about physical damage and putting people at risk. I feel like so many people lied and they don't realize the damage they are actually causing because most people who are trying to deceive you are trying to keep you. They don't want to lose you, which is why they're not telling you the truth because they know if they know the truth, you're going to leave. Just as you just mentioned, once you found out this information, that was it for you, correct?
That was it for me. That was it for me. I was so disgusted. I was so many emotions. So many emotions. I'm like, how could I let myself be deceived? I was beating up on myself. You know, I went through a lot of emotion. I went through different emotions at different times when I thought about the situation. I beat up on myself and said, Dad, how could I be so stupid not to know?
Right.
Then I'm like, yo, how the hell you going to be doing this and you supposed to be with me? You know? So I went through
Right.
a lot of emotions. And then I went through sadness. And then I went through depression. Then I went through, so I went through different emotions when this incident occurred.
Did you have
It
any
was,
self-esteem issues at the time? Or were
yeah,
you just confident in your looks since you pretty much hit on just about every 7 minutes of the day?
I wasn't confident at the time with myself because I was just like coming out of a really, really bad time of illness. And I was just getting myself back, and then I was going through I went through another breakup and jumped into something else so fast. And
Okay.
that was the problem. I didn't heal from the past relationship, and I was blinded. I was blinded because I didn't allow myself to heal, you
Correct.
know? And jumping into that relationship just caused more damage.
You just made an excellent point. Normally, when we speak of deception, we talk about the person that is the deceiver that has party B crying, if you will, didn't tell you something. But you also just brought up an excellent point that we ignored the red flags. So, in essence, in many cases, the person who gets hurt is deceiving him or herself by pretending they don't see what's there. Would you agree with that at times?
I would agree with that at times, but this level of deception, it was something that I've never experienced.
No, sometimes when you play with a puppy and you let that puppy grow into a dog, or you play with a cubby who's really a lion, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
You
get what
know,
you're
yeah,
saying.
and it seems like sometimes I think, just from my own experiences even, when you allow a person one thing, they go for number 10. It's coming at some point because they're opening the door to see how far they can take you, but we don't realize that at the time. We think it's just some little thing we can handle. Don't realize it's festering into something bigger, I think.
I really feel like you're correct in what you're saying, but also the issue is, how about you having some ethics and integrity about your own self?
That's first and foremost, and you hit the nail on the head with a conversation I often have with people, and they disagree. I always say, they say, well, like we just said, the person who's receiving the offense should know better. We don't always know better. And even if we do, the person that's initiating has to be held accountable. Sometimes both people have to be accountable. That's where the saying, it takes two to tango, comes from, for all of you out there who may know it. Everybody has to play a role, whether you're playing a passive role or an aggressive role. You're always in someone's story and your own story at the same time.
Exactly. Like I said, I'm taking my responsibility for what happened, but I did not deserve that. I did not deserve what that incident that happened. It was disgusting. I was so
Mm.
disgusted. I was flabbergasted. I was appalled at what I found, what I discovered.
Well, I must
And
say, without
and
knowing the details, you sound like it was something that none of us would like to experience. That's for
I
sure.
don't I don't wish that on my worst enemy. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. The poem tells the story, but you know, like I tell people, you should be able to come talk to your mate about anything.
Mm.
And because whatever's done in the dark, it is going to come out,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how hard you try to hide it.
Right.
It might take years, it might take months, it's going to come out. And if I wasn't acting like Inspector Gadget, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known anything.
Well, it's
But
interesting speaking to you as Miss Inspector Gadget, and get into gender. It's oftentimes that when people have conversations about deception, it's normally baby daddy who has 7 baby mamas, and each one only knows about 1 or 0, or some man who's done some offense. But it's not often we speak of the view of men being deceived. Are you comfortable informing me whether or not you have deceived a male in your life, in your dating experience? We always forget that males have emotions and they go through the same things as the females, even though they might not be necessarily as outspoken in the public about what happened to them.
I have deceived, men in my lifetime. Yes, I have, especially when I was very young. Maybe I was getting my karma back. You know how I talk about karma, you reap what you sow. But that level of karma, if it was karma, that I could not believe it. It was some, like I said, it was something that I would not wish on my worst enemy. It was too much. I said, wow, not one person, but several.
Yeah, circumstances do play a role in how we receive that hurt. I would agree with that as well. I was telling
Hmm.
someone that earlier today, that there are different levels to hurt. There really are. Things hurt different depending on longevity, trust, the amount of things that are done, how deep they go with the hate.
You better think it through. You better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie? Use your mind. Don't follow people. Use your mind. do? Yes. You better think. Are you a zombie? Don't be a zombie.
I was deceived on two levels. I was deceived on a friendship level, and I was deceived on a work level. Okay? I'm going to try to make this story as juicy as possible. Okay?
I'm all ears, Poetess
Okay?
Chanelle.
Okay. Now, we were co-workers and we were friends, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of issues. There were a lot of issues happening at the job because one of the managers didn't like me and decided they did not want me there. So her being my friend, later on, I found out she was conspiring against me with him to have me removed from where we were working.
Hmm.
I found that out later.
Wow.
Because I found that out after I left and she took my position.
And why was
She
she up
took,
to no good?
yeah, she was up to no good. And I was disgusted. I was
So
disgusted.
was she pretending she had your back and grinning in your face
She
and,
was pretending that
girl,
she
you
had,
my everything?
yeah, she was acting like she had my back and everything. I went to her house. We went out. We eat together. And
Wow.
then, yeah, yeah. And then on a friendship level, I was going through something. I was going through a bad breakup. And she hooked me up with her boyfriend's friend, right?
Right.
Even though I was going through a breakup at that time, I wanted to get my mind off the breakup. So I was like, maybe I need to meet somebody else.
Right.
So she hooked me up with the boyfriend's friend, right? And me and him talked on the phone a couple of times, and I think we went out once. And when I got removed from the site and went somewhere else, and I stopped talking to her because I found out that she was in the same position. Everything just came together once I left.
Wow.
And he told me that she was talking about me to the boyfriend, and he happened to be around at the time, and they were laughing at the fact, like, my misfortune in the breakup, like,
Mm.
laughing about it behind my back and stuff like that. And he came back and told me, he said that he stood up for me and told them that's not funny. And he came back and told me.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. We talk, a lot of times even in the theater, when movies even have the name deception, they normally show it from the standpoint of a couple that's in an intimate relationship, but it does come in every part of our lives, and we have to be careful, as you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, in work and business relationships, personal relationships, intimate, platonic, familia. Always on guard. I feel like we're always in soldier mode to some extent.
Exactly. And I saw her after that. I saw her. We were in a mutual place. You don't know what I. Oh,
Did you say
oh.
anything to her?
Why would I? I wanted to knock her head off.
Well, sometimes people are angry and go up to a person to continue a beef, or finish something.
I couldn't say
I
at
don't
this
know if it
mutual.
was complete between y'all or you needed to knock her down like you just
I
mentioned.
trust me. It was
Oh,
the only thing that held me back was the gathering was with someone I was close with,
understand.
and he was like, "Don't do that."
Right.
That's the only reason why I didn't put hands, feet, teeth, all that on her because
Ooh.
she played herself. I feel like she couldn't even look at me though. She could not even look at. I was looking dead at her. I was looking at her. I was looking through her, okay? And she couldn't even look at me.
And I'm
She
sure
could,
trying to hide in plain sight, as they say.
you
That's
know,
damaging. I can recall some work situations that had me on fire, ready to take people and throw
mm-hmm,
them through the ceiling. And being
you
one
know,
step away, like you said, just the right person come along to stop it.
I'm not condoning violence or anything like that. I'm not saying violence is the one or be all, because we supposed to be living in peace. But sometimes people take you there.
Absolutely.
You know, the things that they do, they think it's okay, and it's not okay. You know, it's not okay.
Yeah,
Like
we're entitled to feel anger. That's a great point you mentioned. You know, deception does lead to not just sadness and hurt, but anger. Everybody doesn't take
right,
well to deception. Some people get unhinged on you, as I love to bring up in a wonderful movie that I saw a couple of years ago and watched recently, where the man had enough. You know, because people playing games all the time. It would behoove some of these people out here who are deceiving to save their own lives by leaving people
right.
alone. It's not just us getting hurt, you know, or us meaning if I'm playing the role of the victim in the conversation. It's also the people that try to deceive people who are losing their lives as well. Do you think it's fair for someone who is being deceived to go with capital punishment like that on someone when they're angry? Or do you have to, like you said, when you were in that instance where it's for yourself, no matter how angry you are? Or is there a point where it's okay to take a head and bang it in a tree? I know it's a heavy question.
That is a heavy question, because it's like you have to, it's so hard to answer that, because when you're in it, your mind is going different ways.
Hmm. And
Your
that's
mind is
exactly the answer I
going,
want to hear. That's what's going on. You bring up a great point.
your mind is,
Everything is hitting you, correct?
yes, everything is hitting you. You like, yo, I'm going to slit the throat. I'm going to slit it. I'm going to kill. Like, you thinking so many things, and then something happens, a revelation, or you snap out of it, or God is speaking to you like, don't do that. Don't. It's not worth it.
I love how
It's
you
not
always
worth
talk
it.
about, you know, the importance of God to our life, no matter what we're going through, whether it's
Right.
deception or anything. And that I think can play a key role, like you said, in the outcome of a situation. Keep you out of jail, keep you from hurting someone, because you can calm down when you go to your source. Thanks for bringing that into the conversation. You all have been listening to the poetess Chanelle speak to the poem that she is sharing with us this month, Deception. We'll be right back.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think.
Poetess Chanelle, you know what's interesting about a lot of this deception we talk about? You know, these people do people wrong, and then they have the nerve to want to explain it, and they want you to take them back. I think you mentioned in your poem that this person wanted you back and actually made attempts. How did you feel knowing this person had betrayed you in such a horrific way and had the nerve to try to ask you to possibly experience it again?
my response is, how dare you?
Mm.
How dare you call me and ask to be back together? How dare you? And I approached you with what I found. You lied about it. You tried to cover it up, and then had the nerve to try to want me back. No, I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, honey. Okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sipping my tea, and you heard it right here, and you better think. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, 20 with a pole, period. We'll be right back.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think.
Chanelle is hunkered down, bunkered
Yes.
down, trying to interview a young man who's actually on the subject of the show. He's in the act of deception. He's had a waiting 10 minutes with his
Uh-huh.
potato chips and water. What's up,
Yeah, I'm
poetess?
going to exchange these chips. Tell that guy I'm going to exchange these chips.
Y'all hear that? The poetess is
Yeah, I'm
exchanging
gonna
the
exchange these
chips.
chips, Uncle.
You hear that?
Okay.
The poetess Chanelle is with Uncle,
Exchange these
one of her favorite young men in
chips.
Brooklyn, getting her potato chips exchanged because she's
Get
just been
these.
deceived,
Thank
ladies
you.
and gentlemen.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the poetess Chanelle has been
Uh-huh.
deceived right here on the air. As you hear, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening
I am
to
leaving.
You Better Think, and the poetess Chanelle is
Yes,
leaving.
I am leaving. I'm out of here. I'm not gonna be standing here waiting for him. I'm leaving.
You heard that,
I'm out
ladies
of
and
here.
gentlemen, right here on the air. The poetess Chanelle said goodbye.
Uh-huh. But he's not around today.
We're listening to the poetess Chanelle on You Better Think. Tonight she was interviewing a young man in anonymity, but instead he actually is now currently live engaging in the act of deception. Poetess Chanelle, tell us what you're feeling.
I feel very upset, okay? Because I was waiting for him on the corner and he stood me up. He stood me up.
Y'all hear that, ladies and gentlemen? The beautiful poetess Chanelle was stood up by an anonymous young man who was going to appear on the show tonight to talk about how he
Uh-huh.
was deceived, but instead he has deceived our hostess. And
Yeah,
guess what? She's mad.
yes I am. I'm very upset. He made me come outside and I did not have to really come outside. And you know what? He just be talking crap. It's okay though. He gonna try to act like nothing happened tomorrow when I see him.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? You're listening to You Better Think, and we're talking about deception. So, ladies and gentlemen, we all know about deception and how people say they go into the store. This time, the young man sent the poetess Chanelle to the store. And what happened?
He said, "Can you buy me some Lay's and a water?" I said, "All right. You know you doing me this favor? No problem. Even though Lay's went up at $2.29. Anywho, I get the tip, I get the water. Guess what? He still ain't show up.
Okay,
So
15 minutes later, she's still waiting.
exactly. And I just went and traded the chips for some smart popcorn for
Mm.
me.
See? Smart woman, ladies and gentlemen. You heard that? Smart popcorn for her. Lays for him. Y'all see what's going on here? You hear what we're ordering here. She's a smart woman. I think the poetess Chanelle has left the building, haven't you, young lady?
Yes, I have.
And that's how we do it, ladies and gentlemen. You better think.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie? You better think. Use your mind, don't be a follower. You better think. Yeah, I like that. I love that beat. It's ill.
Thank you all for joining us for this month's episode of You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen and the poetess Chanelle. As always, we have another treat for you. I know you're all still reeling from that wonderful poem that we just heard, but we're going to take it up a notch and we're going to continue to delve deeper into this subject of deception. We are privileged to have on our show the wonderful Inez Reilly, who graced you with her voice on ministry on the God episode last month. This week she's back to talk to you all directly and enjoy some conversation with the wonderful poetess Chanelle. So Cass is going to sip a beverage, have some tea, and listen in with the rest of y'all. Hello, ladies.
Hello, Inez. Inez, thank you so much for joining us on You Betta THiNK. Yes, and we appreciate you on the show. And like Kat said, this month's theme is deception. We have all been deceived in our lives by family members, friends, co-workers, lovers. And I wanna expand on the lovers part. I know you were married, Inez, for quite some time, for quite a long time. I would like for you to give us a story, a snippet, possibly, on what happened. Give us a snippet on how you were deceived, how your husband deceived you in your marriage.
Yes, well, again, thank you for having me on. And yes, I was married for more than 10 years, and I had known my ex-husband at the time since we were 13 years old. So you would think that it would be difficult to deceive someone who has been in your space for such a long amount of time. However, when we choose to present a particular picture and we stick to that picture for a long period of time, our guard can be let down, if that makes sense. Because we can know somebody and we can be involved in different situations and different circumstances with that person and say, okay, I see how you are, I see what you're like, I see how you think and how you move about. So then we think that we can't be deceived. But after over a long period of time, that someone can keep up a facade for a long period of time, right, then eventually our guard is let down. And that's what happened with me and my marriage. And I was under the impression, me myself, is that when you get married, there's a certain level of vulnerability and honesty that you should have with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I was convinced at the time that he was in the same space, that he said, okay, we can get here, we're going to be okay, let's go ahead and share some of the things that we're not sharing with other people, and then we're not going to judge each other, we're not going to bring it back up, we're not going to, rehash it or rehearse it. It's just us being able to say, okay, I trust you with this piece of myself. And so I got into the situation where I said, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and let my guard down. I'm going to share some things with you. And as time went on, instead of it going on, I'm thinking things are fine. But whenever something didn't go his way, it would come up. It would be something that he would bring up to other people in a way to excuse his own behavior. And so I'm not thinking that that's something that's part of the conversation when someone comes to me and says, well, so-and-so said this or that, and I'm like, that could not have been. And so then when I would approach him, he would say, that's not what I did. And so his deception for me was deceiving me into thinking that we had a relationship, a mutual agreement of vulnerability and non-judgment, for lack of a better word. And so I walked around thinking that I was safe, that my personal person was safe with this particular person, and it wasn't.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie? You better think. Use your mind, don't be a follower. You better think. Yeah, I like that. I love that beat, it's ill.
It seems like you really trusted him and he took advantage of your vulnerability and trust. Am I right, Chanelle?
That's absolutely right, yes.
Okay. I would like for you to expand on and tell us, describe your feelings when the first instance happened. Describe how you felt.
Yes, it's a feeling of betrayal, right? When someone deceives us, we feel like we've been betrayed because we have been painted a picture of a thing or a situation or given the assumption or the illusion that it is something that it absolutely wasn't. Or I'm the only one that carried it that way. And so I felt betrayed. I felt I was literally in disbelief that it would actually happen. And then what it caused me to do for a long period of time was to take that pieces of myself and not present them to anyone, right? Because if you can't trust your husband, the person that you're supposed to be at one with, then who can I trust? So it took trust away from me for a really long time.
Right. I understand that when you allow yourself to become open with somebody and then you reveal your secrets to them and then you find out they're running their mouth. You find out that they throwing it in your face. You know? It hurts. It hurts. Mm-hmm. It's like a stab wound. Am I right or wrong?
No, absolutely. It is actually a stab wound. You're taking something that I gave you. You're actually stabbing me with a tool or a weapon that I gave you. Right? Something that I gave you. And so, it's deceiving a person or deceiving me personally into thinking that, okay, we're good, that you're really not going to hold this against me. We're going to move on from here. We're going to build from here. And I'm walking and working towards that, and you are not. You're actually just holding on to it and waiting for your chance to jump on it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand that. That sounds like he was a narcissist.
That's what it absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what it was. Okay. And at the time, I didn't have the language to call it that. So it was, but I have later learned that that's what that was, and how, certain instances in our lives can make us easy prey for narcissism.
Yes, it can. But you know what? I would like to ask you, when you found these things out, that what he was doing, what did you do? Did you seek revenge to get back at him? Did you pray for him? Did you argue with him? What did you do?
I did not seek revenge, and I had to learn to pray for him.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think.
I internalized it, right? I internalized it because it came along with other things, right? If somebody's in place to actually deceive someone, right? Because we're not just talking about a simple betrayal, it was an actual deception. We lived this life for over some time, and you wanted to make me feel comfortable enough to be able to do this, and then so you could just do a thing, right? So I internalized the situation first. I said, okay, how could you get yourself in this place? You knew that he was capable. You understand what I'm saying? So it became a thing of me tussling with myself at first.
Okay. And let's talk about a little bit about the healing process. Like, what was it like for you? Take us there. Take us through the healing process of how you recovered from this.
Right. And it took some time. Right? It took some time. It takes time. When someone deceives you, it takes time because, again, you start thinking about, oh, this has to be me. It was something about me. So before I could heal from the deception, I had to heal from my misconception of myself. Right?
That is a wonderful point.
Right. So it can take a little longer, and I think we wrestle so much with it, and it takes so much longer because we don't take ourselves there. We don't get ourselves to the point of healing the wound that can open back up, because that's what that's what ends up happening. And so I had to actually get before the Lord, and get before the Lord and ask Him to show me what were my trigger points, what were the things that made me successful. How is it that I allowed myself to believe a thing about a person when I was shown something else before? Right? So, and I also had to get myself into the places that I chose, because I did, right? And not to feel bad about myself, and I had to get there too, right? Not to feel bad about myself for making the choice because of the ideal that I had set up in my head about how a marriage was supposed to be. And so my healing had to start with me healing those inner wounds of trusting in places that I was allowed, that I should have been, rather, able to trust when I was small, when I was younger, when I was a child, right? Those little things that happened that break trust along the way, and then put me in place to be able to be, um, again, coerced into another relationship like that anyway. And I'm talking about familiar relationships, right? I'm talking about mother issues, right, father issues, and sibling issues, and molester issues, right? Right. So I had to go all the way back there. I had to do the work of freeing myself from the baggage that allowed me to put myself in that position in the first place. Mm-hmm. That does not take the onus off of him, right? He is still responsible for the deception that he had, and we also have to understand that. I also had to understand that by me taking on my part, accepting the role that I played, turning that over to God, did not take away what he did, right? My vulnerability did not give him license to do what he did.
Amen.
So I wasn't excusing him, right? I wasn't excusing him. Of course he was. Right? Of course. Because he was responsible as grown, he's responsible. So as I was doing that work, I had to leave his part alone for a minute, right? Leave his part alone. Come to terms with how I had to heal myself, how I had to come to terms with, okay, you can trust yourself before you can trust somebody else. And then once we get there, and then understand that, again, I'm going to take it to the Bible. The Bible tells us that the arms of flesh will fail us.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie? You better think. Use your mind, don't be a follower. You better think. Yeah, I like that.
Everybody out in the audience, this is Cass Allen. You better think. You hear my co-host Poetess Chanelle and our special guest Inez Reilly going deep with a conversation about deception. From the good to the evil and back. I think we all know how lucky we were to be a part of that conversation. Those two women just dropped the mic and left the building for coffee. People deceive each other like it's no big deal, like just having a meal. It's just a regular part of life. It's something you can expect every day, sometimes more than once per day. A lot of times we forget that everybody has a movie, not just us. We center our needs and emotions, etc., around ourselves, and we take everybody else and make them players in our game. And we forget that everybody in our game has their own movie they're trying to star in. They're the center of their own lives. They have goals, desires too. And a lot of times, people out here doing deception are altering those people's lives, hurting them, making them angry, whatever. Taking away their opportunity to be with someone who is honest. And like we've also discussed, sometimes we're aware those red flags are waving all over us, and we take them and we make an outfit out of them and then wear it on a date with the offender. There are times, as we mentioned, we don't even know what's going on, and people look at us like we're idiots. There are times we're accused of, you know, taking all the responsibility for being naive, and people don't even lay accountability on the person who's making the trouble. There are times where a person is constantly being deceived and allowing it and doesn't take responsibility and plays super hyper victim. And as we mentioned, a lot of people talk about this and show this from a intimate love relationship, but it happens in every sector of our lives: work, personal, going to the gym. It could be anything. There's someone up to something. At the end of the day, as the ladies discussed, you got to go deep inside, and be real with yourself so that you can see clearly. There used to be a saying about wearing tinted glasses and changing the view. Stop changing the view. You better think. You've been listening to You Better Think with Cass Allen and the poetess Chanelle. Good night.
Use your mind, you better think. You better think. Think it through, you better think. You better think. You better think. Are you a zombie?